culture shock on Thursday, and what we're going to be taking up this at the launch of the show. We're looking at taking up all of this story, the story about Sandy Hook and all the gun stuff, the flaring up of the guns, and this is the problem. And we have a different story to tell here. And I think we need to recognize and understand that they're starting to connect the dots. Yeah. They're starting to connect the dots that the common thread in all of this is the antidepressants. All of the shooters in the past, the high schools, the grammar school, all of them, they're all on antidepressants or coming off of them. So this is what I wanted to get to the guys to speak about. And Dwight, why don't you go first here and speak to what we're looking at with, from Columbine to Sandy Hook. We're talking about the guns, we're talking about the drugs. What do you think?
Well, what we've seen, Tony, is a huge spike in violence. And really, I should go to school to be able to learn reading, writing, and arithmetic, and not have to go to school and think about, am I going to my own funeral? That one of the biggest selling backpacks last year, Tony, was the bulletproof Kevlar backpack.
Exactly.
It came in Disney Princess, it came in cars, Disney Pixar cars. It is a Kevlar backpack made for 5- and 6-year-olds. You can't even buy one right now because they're so back-ordered. And when you think about it, what happened in the public schools? What took place? And when I say public schools, there's only been one shooting at a private school, and that was a teacher who was fired, who came back and shot and killed the administrator. You don't have, kids in the private schools where they're talking about values, whether it be a Catholic school, whether it be a Christian school, whether it be, maybe an evangelical school. The violence isn't there when you have that value system. When you get into the public school system where the values were taken out, we have these violent acting out. But remember, it's not every child, it's not every school. School is still one of the safest places for children in the U.S. The difference is that to a tiny percentage, to the Erics and the Dylans at Columbine High School, to a tiny percentage of people, of students, and almost always male, we'll see that those individuals that were under psychiatric care, psychotropic medication, and they had mental health issues, that individual becomes increasingly violent and dangerous. And the difference with Columbine is they work together as a team. And I know that a lot has been said from Hollywood that the Hollywood violence had nothing to do with it, and yet Eric and Dylan watched a movie. Their favorite movie, when you do the research, was called Natural Born Killers, and it was one of the most violent movies ever made. They watched it for hundreds and hundreds of hours, almost like a simulator, practicing shooting on classmates, shooting on people. Most people would not do that, but to that tiny percentage, they go off the edge and they become extremely dangerous.
You got all the stuff with video games. We're talking about video games and Hollywood and all of this stuff. It's just I really believe that those are problems, but I think where I'm going with all of the difficulties I see, and that is the psychology and the drugs that they are giving these kids that cause these problems. So what do we do about that, Jeff? Where do we go with that?
Well, Tony, we've been talking about this for years now, and I still just don't get this idea of TMP, too much psychology. It's almost like an oxymoron, isn't it? I mean, isn't the problem that we don't have enough psychology?
No.
Isn't the problem that we have too many kids with emotional issues that are not getting the care that they need? Isn't it the issue that a lot of these parents are pulling their hair out because they cannot get these psychiatric hospitals to keep these kids and make sure that they're getting the proper psychiatric treatment? I mean, is that what happened?
I have to jump in here, Dr. Jeff, because, there are people watching, and they're going to want to tune in on Thursday, 4 o'clock Eastern, to join the conversation because it will be two-way talk. But I have to jump in because I'm not sending my son, my daughter to school for a counseling session. I'm sending them to school to be able to learn, to get an education, to one day get a career. And yet, if I follow a socialist agenda, then I do want to send them to school for counseling because they're not going to get a career anyway because the government's going to take care of them. It's not about capitalism, it's about socialism. And so we're talking about very different agendas here.
Well, I wish we could get out of the mindset of blaming everything other than what is really going on. And the fact is that we are a nation that is hurting, that is a nation of violence and aggression, and no one's getting counseling in schools. That's the problem. We're not identifying the fact that these kids are coming from troubled homes, not necessarily poor homes, troubled homes. And I agree with you that perhaps if we had more religion in the schools, that would be a sort of a counseling or setting a structure to be able to deal with these kids. But Tony talks about this idea that all these kids are on antidepressants, and I admit that. I'm the first to tell you, yeah, you know, these drugs are not really working the way that they should. But
why not?
Baby out bathwater.
Why not?
Because the drugs still are not designed in a way to truly target the receptor sites that need to be addressed in order to stop the the depressed, the psychotic thinking. They're just not working the way that they should.
Well, wow! Imagine that. They're not working the way they should. I think we just made news. For goodness sakes, we're giving people drugs that they don't know when they don't work the way they should. How is that all about? What's that all about? Dwight?
Tony, how about all the people in this world who are being helped by antidepressants, schizophrenics that are leading normal lives because they're taking their antipsychotic medications and doing well? Do we throw the baby out with the bathwater is the question. Would you say there should be no more antidepressants that should be prescribed? No more antipsychotics that should be prescribed?
No.
No more therapy for these kids? Just turn them on to Jesus and call it a day?
Turn it over to Jesus and call it a day. Sign me up for that one. I like that. From the words of Dr. Jeff. Let's just turn him over to Jesus because the great shepherd would shepherd his sheep.
God helps those who help themselves.
That's not in the Bible.
That's right.
That is not in the Bible.
Just like separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. Separation of church and state was in a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote, not in the Constitution.
Even when Jesus walked the earth, he ran into people who were possessed by the devil, people who had severe emotional issues, and he tried to help or even help cure those people.
No, he didn't try. But Dr. Jeff, he didn't try. Dr. Jeff, he did not try. Dr. Jeff, he did not try to heal them. The Bible says he healed them all.